Hi guys, Mr. Swartz here. Just want to recap where we are at this point before I get into any new information. We've talked about the French Revolution beginning and how the estate system had a lot to do with that, as well as food shortages and deaths and things like that, poor harvests. And then we got into the storming of the Bastille before we left. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start with slide 15 and we're going to end with slide 18. So we're only going to do a couple. This should take probably no more than like 25-30 minutes tops. So we're not going to overload you with too much here today. So if we're looking at slide 15, which obviously you should be on right now, I'll go ahead and start there. The National Assembly, which if we think back to who that group is, it's the members of the Third Estate who had declared themselves as National Assembly due to the unfair voting system in the Estate General. So instead of each representative getting one vote, each estate got one vote. So basically, what would have to happen is the first and second estates would have to literally vote themselves out of power or vote away their own privileges, which we know isn't going to happen. So the third estate is going to get outvoted every single time. So they declare themselves the rightful government of France. So now we've got two governments vying for power at the same time, the monarchy under Louis XVI and this new National Assembly. The National Assembly at this point has to go ahead and take some action, and there was these peasant rebellions in the Great Fear, which is something that we talked about in slide 14 right before we started. So it should have been the last slide you reviewed yesterday, um, where they were breaking into old lords' houses, destroying records of debts, because there was this threat that other countries were going to come help out, and they were going to put the king back in power. They were going to destroy the revolution, and if that was going to happen, they were at least going to destroy the record of their debts before they came back. So the National Assembly reacts to these peasant rebellions, um, because if these other countries are going to be putting down the rebellion, they're going to go ahead and try to get as much done quickly as they can before that happens. It's all going to start August 4th of 1789. The National Assembly votes to abolish all of the legal privileges that the first two estates had. And if you don't remember what those privileges were, I gave you a short list here on the slide. It's obviously not an exhaustive list, it goes farther than this. The taxation system is a pretty easy first one. If we don't remember, the third estate paid about 50% of their income in taxes, whereas the first and second estates paid essentially nothing. The chief tax of France, the taille, they were exempt from. They only paid maybe 1 to 2% of their income in taxes. That was now abolished. Everyone was going to pay the same taxes. If anything, the first and second estates were going to pay more. They abolished the feudal system, which is something that we had briefly talked about before. I'm not going to go into that quite as much. Um, Dealt with land ownership and lords and knights and things like that, and the treatment of peasants. Um, Voting, right, giving more French citizens the right to vote and to have a say in government. So all of the privileges that those top two estates had that the third estate resented, they voted to abolish them. They got rid of them right now because they know that there's a chance this revolution is going to be put to a stop soon, and they've got to hurry up and act and get everything they want done now. They're not done there though, right? If we just fast forward about 22 days, a couple weeks later, August 26th, um, the National Assembly adopts the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. I know it's a pretty long name for a document. Um, Most people would just call it the Declaration of Rights of Man. We'll leave that last part and of the citizen out. On the slides, I will a lot of times even abbreviate it as DRMC, just to make it shorter, right? I'm not going to sit there and spell out the whole thing every time. Um, if we go through it, which of course we will, you're going to notice that it's very common, or it's very similar to documents that we've seen before. The English Bill of Rights had a big influence on this, as did our American Declaration of Independence and the Constitution that we wrote as well, because our Constitution went into effect literally just a few months before this. So, talking about the same time period here. The I don't want to say motto, the phrase that they would use for this document would be liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression. That should sound pretty familiar to you because we in the United States have the phrase life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Um, Pursuit of happiness literally just meant the ability to own property back then. So if we look, life, I would pretty much equate that to security here. Liberty and property are all listed. All three of them are right there. The only thing they add in is resistance to oppression, and I think that kind of goes without saying. So basically, what can we take from this slide? The National Assembly, that group that declared themselves the rightful government of France, they hear that there are rumors that this revolution is going to be put down, and so they decide to go ahead and act quickly and to get done what they want to get done. This includes abolishing all of the privileges that those top two estates had, things like taxation, feudal system, voting, things like that. And then they quickly adopt the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, which is basically spelling out what rights the French people have. So at this point, you're probably asking yourself then, what are those rights, right? If they spell out the rights in this document, what are they? Well, if we go ahead and switch to slide 16, that's what we're going to talk about. Clearly, it's a pretty long document. That picture that you see on the right side of the slide is basically a recreation of exactly what that looked like, artwork and all. I know it's kind of weird. But what I gave you is a short list on the slide of things that we see in this document, and they should sound pretty familiar to us because they're very similar to what we see. The first one is all men are free and equal before the law. So there's no more, state system differences where if you were born into the first estate or the second estate or the third estate, you had different privileges that other people just didn't. Um, all people were going to be free before the law, and most importantly, everyone is going to be equal before the law. The second one, appointment to public office based on merit. So if you don't know what merit essentially just means uh, based on your worthiness, right? So it's not going to be your last name or what estate you were born into or who you knew. It was going to be based on the job that you had done. So if you're going to be appointed to a government position or get promoted or move up in society, it was going to be because of the work that you had done, not because of your last name. No group is exempt from taxation. There we go. Spelled it out in the last slide. Here it is again. It doesn't matter what estate you're in the remnants of the estate system. Everyone is going to pay taxes. Doesn't matter who you are. So they've gone ahead and changed that. Freedom of speech. Don't think that needs really explained. Freedom of the press. Same thing. Don't think that needs explained. And they even kind of debated on whether any of this applied to women, which sounds weird to us in the year 2020. But we have to remember this is the year 1789. So this really didn't apply to women in a lot of countries, even the United States, in a lot of respects. And not surprisingly, the French decided that no, it did not apply to women at this time. This was for all men. If that sounds wrong, it kind of is. But the United States had taken the same approach on this, so we are definitely not exempt from that either. So these are just some of the basics that you see in the Declaration of Rights of Man. It obviously goes a lot further than this, but this is where it starts. So at this point, we can go ahead and switch to slide 17, which is bad news for Louis, right? Louis the 16th, the king. So that's who we're talking about here. While all of this is going on, he has obviously gotten out of Paris. Paris is the most radical city in France at this time. Um, and he's kind of hanging out in Versailles at this point, and he's just kind of remaining quiet, laying low, trying to let this all pass. And then once other countries come to help him, he's going to come right back. He's just trying not to draw a lot of attention to himself right now. He's trying to let the storm pass. But that doesn't mean that he's accepting everything that this National Assembly is doing. He refuses to accept their decisions. He does not see them as the rightful government of France. He obviously sees himself as the rightful government of France. So he won't accept it, but he's not necessarily going to raise too much of a stink about it because he's trying to lay low and not draw a lot of attention to himself. But that doesn't mean that there's not people in France that aren't going to raise a stink about something at this point. because on October 5th, we have thousands, that's right, thousands of armed Parisian women. If you don't know what Parisian means, it just means people that live in Paris, that march to Versailles, the city where the king is living. And it's basically your first women's march, all the way back in the 1700s. They go and they protest. They tell them that the children are starving, and that the National Assembly is trying to help, and that you need to try to stop resisting this. We need food. We're struggling, and they are basically right at the gates of his kingdom, right, of his palace. So he doesn't really have much of a choice but to address this. He can't just ignore it, pretend it's not happening. So the crowd then insists that they return to Paris with them, right? You're not going to hang out in Versailles over here while everything's going on in Paris. We are taking you back with us. Um, like I said, the king is basically a prisoner in his own castle at this point, and there's thousands of armed women outside. You kind of have no choice but to go with them, right? You're not going to beat them by yourself. So the king does go back to Paris with them, and in fact, he brings a couple wagon loads of flour with him. Now, if that sounds weird to you, we have to remember what the women came there protesting. They're starving, they don't have any food, and he has a lot of flour. So if he brings it back to Paris with him, they can make bread, right? And there will be food. He's trying to save his own skin a little bit here, but it also shows that he clearly was hoarding a lot of flour and a lot of grain. So it's kind of incriminating at the same time. They take him back to Paris, and obviously Paris is very, very radical at this point, and so the king is once again a prisoner in the city. He can't go anywhere. He's not going to escape anywhere. He's basically stuck inside because everyone is trying to get rid of him at this point. And finally, if we switch to the very last slide for today, slide 18, wasn't just bad news for Louis at this point, it was also going to be bad news for the Catholic Church in France as well. If we remember our state systems correctly, and I know I'm going back a whole month at this point, the clergy was the first estate in France, meaning they were held even higher than the nobility, right? Than the princes, the lords, the nobles, the knights, everybody like that. So they were held in very high regard, and they had a lot of rights, and they had a lot of privileges. But they're about to lose a lot of that right now. They were a major pillar, is what we'll say, of the old order. And so the revolutionaries thought they had to change it too, right? It's a remnant of this old order that used to exist, and so it needs to be reformed. They needed money. Let's just state it that way. The National Assembly needs money to operate. They're in a lot of debt, and so what are they going to do? They seize the land that the church owns and sell it to increase their own revenues. So they basically seize land that the church owned, they sell it, and then that's their own revenue. That's money that they could use to operate. It sounds kind of similar to what Henry VIII did in England when we were talking about him during the Reformation chapter. Pretty similar in a lot of ways, seizing church land and then selling it for your own revenues. Also similar to Henry VIII in England, the church was brought under the authority of the state itself, right? So the country will actually rule the church, not some outside force like the Pope or the Vatican all the way in Rome. So the bishops and the priests are actually going to be elected by the people, just like we elect presidents and members of the House and members of the Senate and people like that. They were actually going to be on a ballot, and the people would elect who those people were going to be. And the state would pay the salary of those people, right? So it's basically a government institution at this point. The problem was, as democratic as all those ideas sound, and as people that live in a democracy, we clearly see the benefit of that. France was a country that was largely Catholic at this point, and this upset many of them. So this was kind of a mistake politically in the way that we think about it, because you just made enemies of the largest population in France, right? Like I said, most people in France were Catholic at this point, and this is going to upset them. So you took people who could be on your side, and you've now upset them and made them your enemy. You don't really want to do that in politics. So while we understand what they were trying to do, it kind of is going to backfire at the end of the day, because you took the church that most of these people belong to, and in one foul swoop, just completely changed the way it works. You're going to make an enemy of a lot of people that you wanted on your side. So at this point, we have went through a couple slides today. Feel free to review them a second time if need be, if you need a little bit extra time to get it. Tomorrow, we're going to start with slide 19, which is on the Constitution of 1791. And if I have to name it, you probably know there's going to be more than one Constitution. So you can expect this story to get pretty messy pretty quick, as the French Revolution tends to do. The American Revolution is nice and simple for the most part. This is not. This is a mess. So we'll start with that tomorrow. Today, what we got is the National Assembly abolishing the rights and privileges of the top two estates. They passed the Declaration of Rights of Man and of the Citizen. We talked a little bit about what some of those rights were. They sound a lot like the rights that we have. We talked about how the king has been approached by an armed group of women and marched right back to Paris. And he's basically a prisoner in his own castle now, because where's he going to go? The people don't like him. He's an enemy of the state at this point. And the last thing we talked about was how the church is having their lands taken and sold by this new National Assembly so that they can have some money to operate. So bad news for Louis, bad news for the church. But the National Assembly is definitely gaining power and gaining money at this point, which means that the revolution is continuing and is clearly growing. We'll continue with this tomorrow. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Please email me if you need anything, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory at this point. Have a good one.